today to pass out under my car? And why my car? Why not Mr. Bronicke's car? Mr. Bronicky lived across the alley and spent his retirement coming up with new ways to make Annabelle crazy. Time was running out and she was starting to panic. "Do you want to have sex? Because if you come out, we could maybe talk about it." More drool and another putrid snort. This was hopeless. She jumped up and dashed toward the house. 10 minutes later, she managed to lure him out with an open can of beer. Not her best moment. By the time she'd maneuvered Sherman from the alley to the street, she had only 21 minutes left to navigate the traffic into the loop and find a place to park. Dirt streaked her legs, her shirt was crumpled, and she'd broken a fingernail when she'd opened the beer can. The extra 5 pounds that had accumulated on her small-bone frame since Nana's death no longer seemed like such a big problem. 10:39. She couldn't risk the construction gridlock on the Kennedy Expressway, so she cut over to Division. In the rearview mirror, another curl sprang free of her hairspray, and perspiration glistened on her forehead. She detoured down Halstead to avoid more road repair. As she maneuvered Sherman's tank-like bulk through the traffic, she scrubbed at her dirty legs with the damp paper towel she'd snatched up in the kitchen. Why couldn't Nana have driven a nice little Honda Civic instead of this bilious, green, gas-guzzling monster? At 5 feet 3 inches, Annabelle had to sit on a cushion to see over the steering wheel. Nana hadn't bothered with a cushion, but then she'd hardly ever driven. After a dozen years of use, Sherman's speedometer didn't quite register 39,000 miles. A cab cut her off. She laid on the horn, and a trickle of perspiration slid between her breasts. She glanced at her watch. 10:50. She'd tried to remember if she'd put on deodorant after her shower. Of course she had. She always put on deodorant. She lifted her arm to make sure, but just as she took a sniff, she hit a pothole and her mouth bumped against the buttercup yellow lapel, leaving behind a smudge of tawny lipstick. She gave a cry of dismay and reached across the vast front seat for her purse, only to have it slip off the edge and tumble into the Grand Canyon below. The light at Halstead and Chicago turned red. Her hair was sticking to the back of her neck, and more curls were springing up. She tried to do her yoga breathing, but she'd only been to one class, and it wasn't effective. Why, when Annabelle's economic future was at stake, had Mouse picked the day to pass out under her car? She crawled into the loop. 10:59. More of Chicago's permanent road construction. She passed the Daily Center. She didn't have time to follow her customary practice of cruising the streets until she found a metered parking space large enough to accommodate Sherman's bulk. Instead, she wheeled into the first exorbitantly expensive parking garage she could find, threw Sherman's keys at the attendant, and took off at a trot. 11:05. No need to panic. She'd simply explain about Mouse. Surely the python would understand. Or not. A blast of air conditioning hit her as she entered the lobby of the high-rise office building. 11:08. The elevator was blessedly empty, and she punched the button for the 14th floor. "Don't let him intimidate you," Molly had told her over the phone. "The python feeds on fear." Easy for Molly to say. Molly was sitting at home with a haughty football player husband, a great career of her own, and 2 adorable children. The doors crept shut. Annabelle caught sight of herself in the mirrored wall and gave a hiss of dismay. Her raw silk suit had turned into a limp mass of buttercup wrinkles. Dirt smudged the side of the skirt, and the lipstick smear on the lapel stood out like a light-up Christmas pin. Worst of all, her hair was uncoiling from the aquanet, curl by curl, with the hairspray weighing it down just enough so that the escaping locks hung lank around her face, like bedsprings that had been tossed from a tenement window and left in an alley to rust. Usually when she got upset about her appearance, which even her own mother described only as nice, she reminded herself to be grateful for her good features, a pair of very nice, honey-colored eyes, thick lashes, and, give or take a few dozen freckles, a creamy complexion. But no amount of positive thinking could make the image that stared back at her from the elevator mirror anything but horrifying. She scrambled to tuck a few curls behind her ears and smooth her skirt, but the elevator doors opened before she could repair much of the damage. 11:09. In front of her she saw a glass wall imprinted with gold letters, Champion Sports Management. She hurried across the carpeted hallway and entered through a door with a curved metal handle. The reception area held a leather couch and matching chairs, framed sports memorabilia, and a big-screen TV muted on a baseball game. The receptionist had short, steel-gray hair and a thin-lipped mouth. She took in Annabelle's disheveled appearance over the top of half-glasses with blue metal frames. "May I help you?" "Annabelle Granger. I have an appointment with Mr. Champion." "I'm afraid you're too late, Miss Granger." "Only 10 minutes." 10 minutes was all the time Mr. Champion had available in his schedule to see you. Suspicions confirmed. He'd only agreed to see her because Molly had insisted, and he didn't want to upset his top client's wife. She glanced in desperation at the wall clock. "I'm really only 9 minutes late. I have 1 minute left." "Sorry." The receptionist turned back to her computer and began tapping away. 1 minute, Annabelle pleaded. "That's all I ask." "There's nothing I can do." Annabelle needed this meeting, and she needed it now. Pivoting on her heels, she rushed toward the paneled door at the far end of the reception area. "Miss Granger!" Annabelle dashed into an open hallway with a pair of offices on each side, one of them occupied by 2 buff young men in dress shirts and neckties. Ignoring them, she headed for an imposing paneled door set into the center of the back wall and turned the knob. The Python's office was the color of money. Lacquered jade walls, thick moss carpet, and furniture upholstered in varying shades of green accented with blood-red pillows. An assortment of news photos and sports memorabilia hung behind the couch, along with a rust-streaked white metal sign with faded black block letters that said Bow Vista. Appropriate, considering the sweeping wall of windows overlooking Lake Michigan in the distance. The Python himself sat behind a sleek U-shaped desk, his high-backed chair turned toward the water view. She took in a state-of-the-art desktop computer, a small laptop, a BlackBerry, and a sophisticated black telephone console with enough buttons to land a jumbo jet. An executive headset lay abandoned next to it, as the Python spoke directly into the receiver. "The third-year money is good, but not if they cut you early," he said in a voice that was deeply resonant, crisp, and Midwestern. "I know it's a gamble, but if you sign for 1 year, we can play the free agent market." She glimpsed a strong tanned wrist, a rugged watch, and long tapered fingers curled around the receiver. "Ultimately, it's your decision, Jamal. All I can do is advise you." The door burst open behind her, and the receptionist flew in, feathers ruffled like an offended parakeet. "I'm sorry, Heath. She got past me." The Python turned slowly in his chair, and Annabelle felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. He was square-jawed and tough, everything about him proclaiming a brash, self-made man, a roughneck who'd flunked charm school the first couple of times around, but finally gotten it right on the 3rd pass. His hair was thick and crisp, its rich color a cross between a leather portfolio and a bottle of Bud. He had a straight, confident nose and bold, dark eyebrows, one of which was bisected near the end with a thin, pale scar. The firm set of his well-molded mouth proclaimed a low tolerance for fools, a passion for hard work that bordered on obsession, and possibly, although this might be her imagination, a determination to own a small chalet near Saint-Tropez before he was 50. If it weren't for a vague irregularity to his features, he would have been unbearably gorgeous. Instead, he was merely drop-dead good-looking. What did a man like this need with a matchmaker? As he spoke into the phone, he turned his eyes on her. They were the exact green of a $100 bill, singed at the edges with displeasure. "This is what you pay me for, Jamal." He took in Annabelle's disheveled appearance and shot the receptionist a hard look. "I'll talk to Ray this afternoon. Take care of that hammy, and tell Audette I'm sending her another case of Krug Grand Cuvée." "Your 11 o'clock appointment," the receptionist said as he hung up. "I told her she was too late to see you." He shoved aside a copy of Pro Football Weekly. His hands were broad, his fingernails clean and neatly clipped. Still, it wasn't hard to imagine them ringed with motor oil. She took in a native